They arrived without warning, just as the sun was slipping behind the Alps and turning the snow peaks gold. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel, then the doorbell, sharp, confident, invasive. When I opened the door, my daughter-in-law stood there like she owned the moment, one hand on a suitcase handle, the other resting lightly on my son's arm as if to claim him before I could. She smiled and spoke those words about peace, about living together, about starting fresh, as though the past were a stain that could be wiped away with a polite sentence. I didn't answer right away. I stepped aside. The hall swallowed them as they walked in, and that was when everything stopped. Their eyes lifted, widened, froze. The main hall was vast, lined with warm wood and stone, a wall of glass opening directly to the mountains. This was not the quiet, aging woman's home they had imagined. This was not something they could casually step into and control. I watched the calculation begin behind her eyes. My son said my name softly, like he wasn't sure he still had the right. I closed the door behind them, sealing us all inside. The first night passed in strained politeness. I showed them the guest rooms in the east wing, far enough that the silence remained mine. Over dinner, she praised the view, the furniture, the obvious expense, each compliment edged with disbelief. My son barely spoke, his gaze fixed on the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes like old arguments he didn't want to relive. When I went to bed, I lay awake listening to unfamiliar footsteps, suitcases opening, whispers drifting through the halls. I thought of the years after my husband died, how quickly they had suggested I sell everything, move closer, make myself smaller and easier to manage. I thought of how I had smiled then too, before choosing a different path entirely. In the days that followed, they tried to settle in as if this were temporary, but expected to become permanent. My daughter-in-law asked careful questions disguised as admiration. How old was the villa? How long had I owned it? Was maintenance difficult? I answered simply, never more than necessary. My son began rising early, walking the property with me in silence. He looked at the mountains the way someone looks at a mirror they're afraid might show too much. On the third morning, he finally spoke. He said he hadn't known it would be like this. I asked what he had expected. He didn't answer. The storm came suddenly, violent and loud as mountain storms do. Snow fell thick and fast, erasing the road, cutting us off. The power went out just after sunset, plunging the villa into a silence so deep it felt deliberate. My daughter-in-law panicked first, pacing, asking questions I didn't answer. My son and I went outside together, the cold biting our faces, working the generator by lantern light. His hands shook, whether from cold or something else, I couldn't tell. When the lights came back on, he laughed once, sharp and relieved, then stopped. Inside, by candlelight and fire, something shifted. He talked, haltingly, about feeling trapped between ambition and loyalty, about letting things happen instead of choosing. I listened. When he finished, I told him that standing still is also a direction. He nodded, and for the first time since they arrived, I saw him clearly. The next day was quieter. The storm left the world white and still, sound muffled, as if nature itself had decided to pause. My daughter-in-law watched me from a distance, her confidence dulled but not gone. That afternoon, she found old photo albums in the library. I didn't stop her. When she asked how I had managed all this alone, I told her I stopped asking to be included in decisions about my own life. The truth unsettled her. She closed the album carefully, as if afraid it might break. It was at lunch the following day that she finally said what she had come to say. She asked, lightly, what my plans were for the villa in the future. The word carried weight. I put my fork down and told her the villa was legally and intentionally mine, secured for my lifetime. I said it calmly, without apology. She spoke of family, of unity, of shared futures. I spoke of boundaries. My son sat between us, silent, smaller than I remembered. That evening, alone on the terrace, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, I understood something clearly. They hadn't come to make peace. They had come to see what I had built and whether it could be taken. And I was finally ready to show them it couldn't. That night, I heard them arguing through the walls. Not loudly, but sharply, the way people do when they believe silence makes words less damaging. My daughter-in-law's voice cut through first, controlled and clipped, listing concerns disguised as logic. My son's replies were slower, heavier, like stones dropped into water. I stayed in my room, not because I was afraid to hear, but because I had learned that some truths reveal themselves better when you don't interrupt. In the morning, the house felt altered. She was colder, more distant, watching me with open assessment now. He avoided both of us. Over breakfast, she announced they might stay longer than planned. I looked up calmly and said the guest wing was available for 2 more weeks. No more. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. She asked why. I told her because this was my home, not a negotiation. The word landed hard. My son's hand froze around his cup. The days that followed were a quiet power struggle. She began rearranging small things, pillows, books, kitchen items, as if marking territory. I put them back without comment. Each correction tightened the air between us. One afternoon, she suggested improvements, renovations that would increase value. I told her the villa was not an investment project. It was finished. She smiled thinly and said everything could be improved. I smiled back and said not everything should be. That night, my son knocked on my door. He asked if I hated her. I said hate requires effort I no longer waste. I told him love doesn't mean surrender. He sat there a long time, head in his hands, like a boy again. The breaking point came when she invited people without asking. Strangers in my hall, voices echoing, laughter too loud, admiration turned into appraisal. I watched her glow under their attention, watched her describe the villa as if it were a shared asset. I waited until they left. Then I spoke. My voice didn't rise. I told her no one enters my home without my permission. She replied sharply, accusing me of control, of selfishness, of punishing them for the past. I told her she was confusing control with consequence. My son finally stepped forward then, his voice shaking but firm. He said they had crossed a line. She stared at him like she didn't recognize the man standing there. That night, she packed angrily, drawers slamming, suitcases snapping shut. She told him they were leaving. He didn't stop her. In the morning, she left alone, her goodbye tight and brittle. The car disappeared down the mountain road, taking her certainty with it. The silence that followed was vast and cleansing. My son stayed. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he asked if he could remain a few days longer. I agreed. Those days were different. Honest. We cooked together. We walked the snow-covered paths. He admitted things he had never said aloud, how easy it was to let someone else lead, how afraid he had been of standing alone. I didn't absolve him. I didn't need to. Growth doesn't require forgiveness first. It requires clarity. When he left, he hugged me tightly, longer than expected. He said he was proud of me. I said nothing, but something inside me settled into place. Weeks passed. The villa returned to its rhythm. One afternoon, a letter arrived. From her. Apologetic, careful, layered with regret and justification. I read it once. Then I placed it in a drawer. Some things don't need answers. Peace, I learned, isn't reconciliation. It's alignment. On a clear morning, I stood in the main hall, sunlight pouring in, mountains steady and unmoved. The house felt complete again. Not because they were gone, but because I no longer needed them to understand who I had become. I closed the door gently behind me and walked forward, fully at home, finally unafraid of who might knock next.